It always starts the same way. She looks at you, not as you are, but as who she imagines you might become. You feel it in her eyes, don't you? That silent expectation, that invisible pull. She doesn't attack you, she doesn't scream, she doesn't demand anything directly, but something in her presence challenges everything you thought you were. And the most dangerous part? You want to prove yourself to her. But this isn't about her, not really. This is the anima at work, the feminine force inside your unconscious that no one ever taught you to recognize. And it's not just some metaphor or abstract idea, it's alive. It's the force that makes you ache for approval, chase emotional storms, and fall into patterns of over-explaining yourself, thinking if you could just say it the right way, maybe she'd finally understand you or stay or soften, but she doesn't, and maybe you've started to feel crazy. One moment she's warm, inviting, almost angelic, and the next she's cold, distant, irritated by your very presence. You replay your last conversation in your head, searching for the mistake. You scan your tone, your words, even your energy, wondering what you did wrong, but no matter how many mental loops you run, you end up in the same place, confused, uncertain, unworthy. And here's the truth you weren't prepared to hear. This isn't happening by accident. What you're experiencing is not chaos, it's initiation, a spiritual trial orchestrated by your own unconscious. Carl Jung warned us about this. He said that the anima, the inner feminine of a man's psyche, is both a muse and a destroyer. She comes in dreams, in projections, in the eyes of a woman who somehow makes you feel like a god one moment and a ghost the next. But what if I told you that this entire experience is necessary? What if I told you that she's not punishing you, she's testing you? Because until you learn to hold the storm without becoming the storm, you're not a man. You're a boy. And every woman you meet will sense it, even if you don't. She will test your emotional container, not because she's cruel, but because your soul asked for it. Deep down, you long to become whole, and there is no wholeness without facing the feminine force that you've exiled from your own inner life. Here's what no one tells you. The woman who pulls away without warning, the one who goes cold after giving you warmth, the one who breaks the rhythm and leaves you spiraling, that woman is playing the role of the anima. She is your psychological mirror, and what she reflects back is devastating. Your hunger to be liked, your panic when faced with silence, your inability to stand firm when the ground beneath you shakes. You see, this isn't about how to get the girl, this is about how to meet the woman within, the one who's been locked away, repressed, unheard. She's the part of you that feels deeply, intuits truth, dances in dreams, and demands that your masculinity have soul, not just strategy. When you ignore her, she doesn't disappear. She projects herself into your relationships. She turns every romantic encounter into a battlefield where the real war is between your persona and your essence. The persona is the mask, the man you think you need to be. Charming, stoic, funny, successful. But the essence is something deeper, still, unshakable. It doesn't perform. It doesn't chase. It simply is. And this is what the feminine tests in you, every single time. Can you remain rooted when the winds of emotion try to uproot you? Can you be still when she is spinning? Can you see through the chaos without collapsing into it? If not, you'll lose yourself in every relationship. You'll become reactive, needy, over-accommodating. Or you'll shut down entirely, pretending not to care while your soul starves behind a wall of apathy. And the most tragic part? You'll call it love. But love that costs you your center is not love. It's regression. The anima doesn't want you to regress. She wants you to rise. Jung understood that the feminine is not something a man conquers. It's something he integrates. And until you do that, you will always project your inner chaos onto women, making them the source of your joy or your agony, your peace or your torment. It's not about her mood swings. It's about your lack of emotional self-possession. You think if you can just figure her out, the relationship will stabilize. But the only thing that can stabilize it is you. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to fix her is the moment she starts to trust you. Not because you solved her emotions, but because you didn't collapse under them. That's the test. That's the trial. Not every woman is conscious of it. Most don't even realize what they're doing. They're not manipulating you. They're responding to something ancient, archetypal. The feminine seeks truth, essence, depth. And if you're only offering performance, no matter how polished, you will be found out. She withdraws not because she hates you, but because some part of her is searching for the man beneath the mask. And if you don't know how to meet him, you'll try to win her back by becoming even more of what she already doesn't trust. More explaining, more doing, more proving. But presence isn't something you perform, it's something you embody. And embodiment comes from integration. Until you learn to sit with your own storms, to feel rage, grief, shame, and still remain centered, you will be a slave to her every mood. Because what you cannot hold in yourself, you will seek to control in others. But control is not masculine energy. Containment is. Do you see the difference? Control tightens, it panics, it manipulates. Containment holds, observes, responds. And the woman who is testing you, consciously or not, is not asking for perfection, she is asking for presence. Not that you never falter, but that when you do, you return to yourself, calmly, completely. Because once you integrate your own inner feminine, your intuition, your emotion, your capacity to feel without drowning, then and only then will the tests begin to fade, not because she's stopped giving them, but because you've passed them. You've become the container. You've become the man. But before you become that man, you will fail, over and over again. You will misread her silence as rejection. You will interpret her pulling away as abandonment. You'll take it personally, even when it's not about you at all. And in that space of confusion, your ego will scramble. You'll reach out too soon, apologize for things you didn't do, try to buy her affection with gestures, words, explanation. You'll try to repair something on the outside that can only be healed from the inside. But nothing works because you still don't get it. The test isn't about her trust in you, it's about your trust in yourself. When you're ruled by the Anima, unconsciously every emotional wave becomes a crisis. You don't just feel emotion, you drown in it. You don't just respond, you react. The feminine isn't challenging you to change for her. She's challenging you to wake up to yourself, to stop seeking salvation in her emotional weather and start cultivating your own inner climate. Until you do, you will forever ride the roller coaster of her mood, swinging between highs of validation, and you will think it's love, when in truth it's emotional addiction. This addiction runs deep. It's older than this relationship. It began the moment you outsourced your sense of worth to how others feel about you. When you were a child, the feminine may have been unpredictable, loving one moment, punishing the next. You learned that emotional survival required constant vigilance. You became an expert in reading subtle cues, adjusting yourself, fixing others, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of disapproval, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough. That fear is the root of your compulsive need to explain, please, perform. But the truth is, no amount of performing will ever make you feel secure, because security doesn't come from her. It comes from your ability to hold yourself steady no matter what she does. That's what emotional containment really means. It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means your feelings don't control you. It means you can sit with discomfort, hold space for pain, allow ambiguity to exist without trying to fix it, escape it, or make someone else responsible for it. Most men never learn this. They stay stuck in the loop of proving and pleasing, of reacting and regretting. They think strength means domination or withdrawal. They suppress their feelings until they explode. They become either emotionally unavailable or chronically apologetic. But neither of these are true masculinity. One is fear masked as sensitivism. The other is fear masked as sensitivity. Both are rooted in a disconnection from the inner feminine. Both are symptoms of an uninitiated man. Initiation doesn't happen through comfort. It happens through conflict, through loss, through the unbearable tension of not knowing. The woman's withdrawal is not your enemy. It's your initiation rite. Her silence is the threshold. The unknown is your fire, and the only way out is through. You don't become a grounded man by chasing her approval. You become him by sitting in the fire of your own insecurity and refusing to flinch, by confronting the parts of yourself that feel unworthy, unlovable, unseen, and choosing to stand tall anyway. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care in a deeper way, not in a way that pleads or performs, but in a way that simply is. You care because you're connected to yourself, to truth, to the moment. That kind of presence is rare, and it's magnetic, because the feminine doesn't trust performance, she trusts presence. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs to feel that you are there, not just physically, but emotionally, that you're not running away, collapsing, or trying to control the narrative, that you can hold her storm because you've held your own. You don't find this strength by thinking about it, you find it by failing, by falling, by watching yourself spiral and then learning how to breathe through it. You find it by confronting your own need to be liked and deciding that self-respect matters more than temporary comfort. You find it by making mistakes and learning not to abandon yourself in the aftermath. Every trial is an invitation, every test is a mirror, and every failure, if you face it honestly, becomes part of your becoming. Eventually the game changes. You stop reacting, you stop chasing, you stop trying to make sense of every shift in her energy, not because you're numb, but because you've developed discernment. You no longer interpret her emotional distance as a referendum on your worth. You understand that sometimes what she's working through isn't yours to fix, that her silence isn't always about you, that the feminine moves in cycles, and that real masculinity is not afraid of mystery. You begin to hold your center, not with arrogance, but with quiet clarity. You say what you mean and mean what you say. You don't overshare, you don't underplay. You speak from truth, and when you don't know, you say that too. You stop performing and start being. And paradoxically, this is what makes her feel safest, because now she can feel the difference between your mask and your essence. She senses the stillness in you, but the strength that doesn't flinch, the presence that doesn't demand. Not every woman will recognize it, and not every woman is ready for it, but that no longer destabilizes you, because this journey was never about passing her tests, it was about passing your own. And when you do, everything changes. You stop attracting women who need to dominate, manipulate, or emotionally parent you. You start attracting women who are also doing the work, who aren't looking for a savior, but a sovereign, not a boy with potential, but a man with presence. And this is when the Anima begins to transform. No longer a chaotic storm demanding your reaction, she becomes a sacred guide, the muse, the priestess, the inner feminine that no longer needs to be projected because she's been integrated. You no longer need her to come in the form of a difficult woman to trigger your growth, because she now lives in you, balanced, alive. That's what Jung meant when he said the goal is not perfection, but wholeness. The feminine within you doesn't need to be tamed, she needs to be heard, held, honored. And when you do that, when you become the container that can hold her fully, you become unshakable. Not because you control the feminine, but because you've made peace with her, inside and out. This peace doesn't look like stillness on the outside. It's not about sitting cross-legged, breathing deeply, pretending nothing gets to you. It's the peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you stand for. Even when everything around you is in flux. You don't panic when she pulls away. You don't scramble to explain yourself when things feel uncertain. You sit in that discomfort like a man who has already wrestled his own shadow and survived. And when you do that, something powerful happens. The dynamic shifts. You're no longer playing the role of the boy seeking validation from the goddess. You become the man who has found the goddess within himself. At this stage, the outer tests no longer destabilize you because you've begun to live from a place of integration. You are no longer split between your masculine drive and your buried sensitivity. You've stopped hiding your intuition behind logic. You've stopped calling your emotions weakness. You've stopped projecting your unmet need for love onto every woman who shows you affection. Instead, you bring your wholeness into the relationship. You become a safe space not because you're agreeable, but because you're authentic. Women can feel this. Whether they're conscious of it or not, they register your presence at the nervous system level. You don't have to convince them. Your energy does the work. You don't have to say you're strong. They feel it. You don't have to argue that you're different. Your silence says everything. And not the passive kind of silence that comes from fear of confrontation, but the grounded stillness that speaks from knowing yourself, knowing your value, knowing what you will and will not tolerate. Because when a man truly knows himself, he no longer participates in games that betray his center. He doesn't try to win someone back by becoming what he thinks they want. He doesn't mold himself into someone he's not just to keep the peace. And when he senses manipulation, he doesn't explode or withdraw. He names it, calmly, clearly, and without apology. The unintegrated masculine either overcompensates or collapses. He becomes hyper-controlling or emotionally submissive. But the integrated masculine doesn't need to prove anything. His boundaries are not threats, they're declarations of self-respect. And when he speaks them, the room shifts. Not because he's loud, but because he's clear. There's no performance, no posturing, no hidden agenda, just presence, just truth. And that, more than anything, is what creates safety for himself and for others. Now understand this, initiation isn't a one-time event. It's not a moment where you finally arrive and everything falls into place. It's a path, a spiral, a continuous unfolding. There will always be new tests, new mirrors, new layers of the anima to meet and integrate. But the difference now is that you no longer fear the process. You welcome it. You meet the unknown, not with defensiveness, but with curiosity. You see the feminine not as a puzzle to solve, but as a presence to honor. You become capable of holding emotional intensity without shutting down or lashing out. You can sit with your partner's rage or sadness without needing to fix it, control it, or make it go away. You don't collapse into guilt or shame when she's disappointed. You remain steady, you listen, you witness, you contain. This is what changes everything, not just in your romantic life, but in how you show up in the world. You stop being reactive, you become responsive. You stop seeking validation, you live from self-possession. And this affects more than just relationships. It transforms how you lead, how you make decisions, how you speak, work, move. People notice. They may not be able to name it, but they feel it. You've become a man who doesn't flinch in the face of discomfort, a man who doesn't avoid depth, a man who isn't afraid to feel. That is rare. And in a world addicted to surface, rare becomes sacred. But it's not glamorous. Becoming this kind of man often requires a period of solitude, a dismantling of everything you thought you had to be. You'll question your identity, your values, your desires. You'll grieve the versions of yourself that were built on survival, not truth. And it won't happen all at once. It will unfold slowly, painfully, beautifully. And the feminine, in her many forms, will continue to challenge you, not because she's cruel, but because she's calling you home. Every woman who didn't validate you, who confused you, who left you emotionally spinning, played a role in that calling. They weren't your punishment, they were your path. They were the embodiment of your own inner chaos, brought to life so you could no longer ignore it. And once you begin to see that, something inside you softens. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this showing me about myself? That's when the anima truly transforms. She becomes less of a storm and more of a compass. She guides you, not by testing you through others, but by whispering through your intuition. You learn to trust her voice, not the voice of anxiety or projection, but the voice of truth, the one that says, "This situation doesn't feel right," the one that nudges you toward beauty, depth, and meaning, the one that helps you distinguish between chemistry and chaos. And as you follow her inner guidance, your external relationships shift. You attract women who have also done the work, who are no longer operating from their own wounded projections, women who value depth over drama, clarity over confusion, presence over performance. And in their presence, you don't feel the need to prove. You feel the call to deepen, to root, to rise. This is the ultimate integration, when the inner marriage occurs, when the masculine and feminine within you are no longer at war but in harmony. You become whole, not perfect, but whole. You still falter, still feel, still get triggered, but you don't lose yourself in those moments. You return, you recalibrate, you hold steady. And that, my brother, is what it means to be a man. Not someone who dominates or controls, not someone who hides behind logic and detachment, but someone who feels deeply and remains unshaken. Someone who honors the feminine without abandoning the masculine. Someone who stands rooted in presence, even when everything around him is testing his foundation. This is not the end of the path, it's just the beginning, but now you walk it with your eyes open. Now that your eyes are open, you start to see everything differently. You see that most of what you once called love was really a survival strategy, a plea for connection wrapped in performance. You thought if you could just be good enough, calm enough, smart or funny or successful enough, you'd earn the right to be seen. But the truth is, you were never meant to earn it. You were meant to embody it, to live from the truth that your worth is not something to be negotiated. It is something to be known. And so the work changes. It moves from external validation to internal alignment. You begin asking deeper questions, not "how do I make her stay?" but "am I staying true to myself?" Not "what does she want from me?" but "what does my soul want for me?" You start making decisions that honor your center, even if they cost you something on the outside. And yes, that will happen. People will leave, situations will shift. Some women won't know what to do with the version of you that no longer overextends, overexplains, overgives. But here's the paradox. What leaves your life at this stage was never meant to stay. It was only ever there to reflect back the parts of you that needed healing. The moment you stop needing the lesson, the teacher disappears, and in that space something else appears. Someone else, a woman, who doesn't need you to entertain her, fix her, or validate her. A woman who doesn't punish your stillness or mistake your emotional depth for weakness. She sees you because she's done the work to see herself. And when you meet her, you recognize her, not just as a person, but as a reflection of the integrated feminine within. The connection doesn't come from a place of lack. It doesn't need to be proven or earned. It flows. It deepens. It challenges you still, but not to win approval, only to become more of who you truly are. This kind of relationship doesn't drain you, it sharpens you. It brings out your fire and your depth, your clarity and your softness. You no longer shrink to fit, you expand to meet. But to sustain this, you must continue the work. You can't get lazy. Integration is a lifelong process. The moment you slip back into reactivity, into performance, into chasing, the balance tips. And you'll feel it, not because she pulls away, but because you pull away from yourself. That's the real danger now. Not losing her, but losing your presence. Because everything you've built rests on your ability to remain centered, no matter what. This is what Jung meant when he said that individuation is not for the faint of heart. It requires vigilance, discipline, humility. It means being willing to face the parts of you that still want to be rescued, praised, comforted. It means recognizing when you're projecting again, when your inner feminine is trying to use her outer form to do the work you still haven't done inside. And in those moments, You don't run, you don't blame. You sit with it, you listen, you grow. Over time, this becomes your default. Presence becomes your baseline. Your nervous system rewires, your instincts sharpen, your energy becomes less scattered, more magnetic. You walk into rooms differently. You speak less, but your words land more deeply. You stop convincing. You start leading, not with force, but with embodied awareness. This is not the man the world told you to become. It's not the caricature of the alpha who needs to dominate, nor the passive, nice guy who trades his integrity for approval. This is something far more powerful. This is archetypal masculinity, the kind rooted in stillness, clarity, and depth. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. The kind that holds not just others, but himself. And you start to see the impact of this in all areas of your life. In your work, you become more decisive, more focused. You don't waste energy on what doesn't matter. You don't chase shiny things to prove something. You move with intention. In your friendships, you draw boundaries with ease. You show up with depth, but you don't carry anyone. You're no longer the emotional sponge or the fixer. You become a mirror, not a savior. In your solitude, you find peace, real peace. Not the kind that's just the absence of conflict, but the kind that comes from no longer being at war with yourself. You enjoy your own company. You hear your own voice again. And in that quiet, something even deeper begins to stir. A sense of sacred responsibility, because once you've integrated the anima, once you've reclaimed your power from the emotional chaos you used to project onto women, you realize this work isn't just for you. You become a lighthouse for others, not by preaching, but by being. Your presence gives other men permission to feel without flinching, to speak without performing, to cry without shame, to love without losing themselves. This is how you change the world, not through domination or manipulation, but through integration, through becoming whole. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. You'll be misunderstood. People will call you cold, intense, too much. You'll be accused of things that aren't yours. But you'll no longer crumble under those projections, because you know who you are, and that knowing is unshakable. So if you're in the middle of the test right now, if a woman has gone silent, if you feel abandoned, lost, spiraling, pause, breathe. Don't chase her, chase yourself. Don't try to control her emotions. Learn to sit with your own. She is not the problem, she is the mirror. And the moment you start using that mirror to see yourself clearly, everything begins to shift. You don't need to become someone else to be worthy of love. You need to remember who you were before you learn to perform for it. That man, the one who feels deeply but doesn't flinch, who sees clearly but doesn't judge, who loves fiercely but doesn't chase, is already inside you, waiting, watching, patiently. He's the man you were born to become, and this is your initiation. But before you go, there's one more thing you need to understand. Everything you've been through, every ghosting, every emotional storm, every moment you felt discarded or confused, was never just about her. It was your soul pulling you into the underworld, into the depths where boys become men, not by conquering others, but by confronting themselves. You don't grow by getting answers from someone else. You grow by sitting in the silence they left behind and finally hearing your own voice. This path isn't clean. It's not linear. You'll relapse into old patterns. You'll still have moments when your wounds scream louder than your wisdom. You'll feel the pull to fix, to chase, to become what someone else wants. But now you'll catch yourself. You'll pause. You'll ask, is this my truth or my fear? That pause, that moment of inner confrontation, that's the difference between a reactive man and a conscious one. Most men never get this far. They spend their lives molding themselves to fit someone else's script, trying to earn love through obedience or performance. They die with masks on their faces and the sound of someone else's approval echoing in their heads. But not you, not anymore. You've seen too much. You've felt too deeply. You've suffered enough to know that your soul cannot be bought with crumbs. So what now? Now you build, slowly, from the inside out. You craft a life that honors your emotional intelligence, your instincts, your fire. You hold space not just for others, but for yourself. You trust your body. You listen to your intuition. You choose people who meet you at the depth you've fought to reach. And you walk away from anything that demands you abandon your center. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop performing for people who mistake your depth for danger. You stop proving your worth to those who cannot even see their own. And in this sacred self-containment, something incredible happens. You start to experience love without fear. Not love as control, not love as addiction, not love as approval, but love as recognition, resonance, a meeting of essences that neither collapses nor consumes but expands. You love from wholeness, from stillness, from a place so rooted in self-respect that nothing can be taken from you, because you've stopped giving yourself away. Carl Jung didn't teach shadow work to make you emotionally invincible. He taught it so that when life pierces your armor, you no longer shatter, you transform. Because integration doesn't mean you don't get triggered. It means you know what to do when you are. It means the parts of you that used to hijack your life are now understood, honored, and held. You become a man who has made peace with his pain, a man who has stood in the fire of his own making and walked out forged not flawless, but whole. And what about the feminine? You no longer fear her, you no longer chase her chaos or shrink from her power. You see her clearly because you've seen her within. You know the anima not as a mystery to solve, but a force to integrate, and so you meet women not from lack, but from depth. You don't need them to save you, soothe you, or complete you. You meet them as equals, as mirrors, as sacred challenges and sacred gift. Sometimes you'll walk with them, sometimes you'll walk alone, but either way you walk as yourself, fully, unapologetically, unshakably. That's the real initiation. So when the next test comes, and it will, you won't ask, why is this happening to me? You will ask, what part of me is ready to evolve? And that question, more than any relationship status or external validation, will become your compass. That's how you become untouchable, not by closing yourself off, but by becoming so deeply rooted in truth that no chaos can pull you from it. And when she looks at you again, not with fantasy but with presence, she'll see the difference. She won't see a boy pretending to be strong, she'll see a man who's lived through fire, faced his shadow, integrated his anima, and chose presence over performance. And that kind of man changes everything. For himself, for her, for the world. Now go live it.